Guys, companies are laying off tens of thousands of employees right now. But is artificial intelligence to blame? Or is AI just a scapegoat? Is it just an easy way of them saving face while laying you off and kicking you to the curb? Well, today we're going to jump into it. I was reading a really interesting article in Fortune this morning, and it really highlighted a lot of the data, the statistics, and some inside information on what's actually happening in the market now, and some, I think, pretty good data to support what's going to happen in the future. And the other day, I'll share a link to this video here. I shared some reports from Challenger and Gray about what's actually happening with unemployment and layoffs throughout the year so far. And up until this point, through 2025, there's been 800,000 total layoffs. Government cuts were the largest at 308,000. Another 171,000 employers notated market and economic conditions, while 120,000 were bankruptcies, job closings. Now, what was interesting to me in the Challenger Gray report, that only 20,000 cuts were attributed to artificial intelligence and automation. However, guys, and this is important, 10,000 of those were in July. So we see this huge surge. The first 5 months of the year, there's 10,000 cuts. All of a sudden, July hits, boom, 10K cuts, all attributed to artificial intelligence. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into this to try to figure out what's happening, because I think a lot of people are either underestimating how AI is going to impact their job role. I see a lot of those types of comments below. By the way, if you have a good comment, put it below. Because if it's a really good comment, if it's really well thought out, I will pin you. I've pinned people in the past, I'll pin people in the future if you bring the heat, okay? If you post something like, "You're an idiot, Mark," then I probably won't pin you, but regardless, you can leave a comment, you can like, subscribe, leave a comment, it's all good. In any event, lots of firings are happening, and we're seeing an escalation in the amount of firings due to artificial intelligence. I think in a lot of cases too, guys, companies are not hiring because of artificial intelligence, but we're not going to cover that in today's video. I want to talk specifically about the firings that are happening. And I saw something that was really interesting. It was a note by the CTO of Infosys, which is a huge Indian company. And they claim that they're seeing now a 30% reduction in entry-level coders. They're not bringing in entry-level coders. They say that AI now enables the leaner teams to maintain or improve productivity, while also creating a clear economic incentive to lay off. So he's coming in here, and just like I said, he's saying we don't need more. We can stay lean and mean, okay? But at the same time, here's the deal. It's much easier for a CEO to say that AI is replacing jobs than to admit, I miscalculated the growth trajectory. And here's the point where you can clearly see that there is an incentive for companies to blame it on artificial intelligence, and instead of saying, we messed up, we're not growing as fast as we could. And we're going to go a little bit more into budgeting, because I think there's a lot to cover there. So here's the deal. AI hype is just really good for tech firms in particular. And there's a really good quote here from Garud Iyengar, who is a engineering professor at Columbia University. And this is what he says. He says, capital markets reward companies that appear cutting edge and AI driven. There's a powerful incentive to frame layoffs as part of AI transformation. Many companies are still in early AI experimentation phases, yet layoffs are already being attributed to AI. So what does that mean? Well, it makes them look futuristic. It makes them look like they're on the cutting edge. They're going to get much more venture capital. They're going to be able to attract better talent. Okay. It also is important to note that it helps shave costs to fit the budget. So you see a company like Meta or Microsoft who are committing $10 billion to developing AI tools or building AI databases. Where does that money come from? Well, it comes from a budget as a whole. So you say, okay, we're going to spend this much money developing our artificial intelligence. That money has to come from somewhere. And again, it could come from investment, from venture capital. It could also come from other marketed line item budget items. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Personally, I was on the board of a community and we had $1 million budget, and we would have projects. we'd have projects that come up. And if we say, okay, we want to do a big paving project, we say, well, where's that money come from? We have to find other areas in the budget to shave from. So that could be from other potential projects, that could be from landscaping, it could be from yard maintenance, it could be from just about any line item. The point I'm trying to make here is that a corporation might say, okay, we're going to shift $100 billion from our labor force and we're going to shift that over to AI development. Okay, and we saw this with Klarna earlier this year. They shaved off tons and tons of their workforce, but realized that it just didn't fill the gaps properly. AI didn't fill the gaps, so now they're hiring back. And I think that there could be a backlash to that too. However, it could also go the other way, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. There could definitely be a possibility where AI becomes so efficient and completely breaks the system in certain areas, like McDonald's, for example, that has processed 64 million job applications using AI. 64 million, that's insane. I actually recorded an entire video on this. I'll post a link to it here. 64 million job applications, that's just crazy. Well, let's go back to Garud Iyengar here, because he continues, he says, okay, companies, it's easy for companies to say it's AI, but he also says productivity gains from AI adoption are being observed in code generation, customer service, and operations. Tech firms aren't just inflating valuations, they're seeing real savings and efficiency, making AI a rational business driver, not just a PR spin. So again, he's kind of speaking out both sides of his mouth. On one side, he's saying, they're probably using it as an excuse because the tech isn't there all the way. But he's also saying that we are seeing indicators. And I think, guys, I'll give you my final assumptions at the end, but I think that's important to note. Just because something is not all the way there yet, doesn't mean it won't be. And that doesn't mean that does not mean that it won't impact what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Okay? So there are a couple problems that companies are seeing now when they try to implement AI at scale. And a few of those problems are that the data isn't structured well enough for the AI to be usable. Maybe they have bad data, maybe it's mistagged, missegmented. I'm going through a pretty complex problem with one of the companies I do marketing for, is that it's just the data that's already in their system, their first party data, is not always accurate, or it's incomplete, which makes it more difficult to implement AI at scale. Now, granted, there's different things that we're doing when it comes to chatbots and training and segmenting new leads coming in from ads, but we're not going to get into all that there. Regardless, it's difficult for companies to implement the AI at scale if the first party data isn't great, or if the third party data isn't great. Inaccuracies in the prompts and in the inputs lead to inaccuracies on the output. So in addition to the data not being structured well enough, the work needs to be double checked. You get something back from the computer, you need a human to double check it. And frankly, I think that's something that every human should be doing now. I mean, if you're using ChatGPT, you can't just blindly accept whatever it says. Critical thinking is still important. And I actually recorded an entire video on how AI is making us more stupid. I'll post a link to it there, because there's a lot of data that shows that AI, while maybe increasing efficiencies, is not necessarily giving you the best result, and it's making humans dumber. So all this work needs to be double checked through the lens of a critical thinker, and I'm hoping that is you. There's also the problem of chatbots struggling with complex or unique tasks, and I think this is something that Klarna kind of ran into. AI chatbots are going to be great for all your FAQs and sending people to the right places and kind of communicating in very basic terms. But when stuff gets more complicated, like, my package is stuck in customs, how do I get it through? It might struggle with that. So again, it's my expectation when I'm working with a SaaS company that they're going to be using AI chatbots on the front end, but at a certain point, I want to talk to a human, and I'll basically ask to speak to a human. Or, I don't curse, but if you start sending curse words to the chatbot, it will forward you to a human more quickly. Pro tip there. So there's another thing that's happening here, and there's been a huge push for American jobs here in America. There's been a lot of people that are upset with outsourcing jobs with H-1B visas, okay? And so this is a big problem that these companies are seeing, and they could be attributing these jobs that are going overseas to artificial intelligence. Why? So Garud here, our Colombian engineering professor, says firms have a strong economic incentive to replace expensive domestic labor with cheaper, equally skilled overseas workers, a practice that predates the AI boom. I mean, this has been going on for a while. He continues, citing AI masks the continuing globalization of tech labor, allowing firms to make cuts while maintaining a futuristic cover story. So again, this is nothing new, and I'll kind of continue with his trend here, but I read the 4-Hour Work Week like 8 years ago. It's been out for 10 years, and that's all about outsourcing your labor. So he continues here. Offshoring is a long-standing trend. What's new is that AI reduces the need for offshoring too. Large language model-based tools can generate documentation, translate code bases, and offer tech support, tasks that were previously offshored. In fact, AI is displacing both domestic and offshore workers, making it a direct contributor to the job squeeze across geographies. A case in point are the layoffs at TCS in India. Now, I just want to highlight this for a minute because one of the common comments that I get here on the channel, which by the way, if you want to stay up to date with what's happening in the job market and with AI, you should definitely subscribe to the channel. I appreciate that. I'm bringing you fresh videos Monday through Saturday. On Sunday we rest, so I don't post videos on Sunday. At any rate, Monday through Saturday, you're going to get a fresh topic that's relevant, that's new, that's pertinent. Okay, but one of the comments that I frequently get is AI does not mean artificial intelligence. It means always an Indian or un-Indian. And listen, guys, I realize that companies will say something that's AI, then on the back end use human. It kind of reminds me of what Theranos did in saying, oh, we've got this magic machine that can just read every single blood test and give you all this information back, when in fact they were just sending the blood to labs to cover up what they were trying to do on a text. I get that, okay, guys? However, India's laying off people too. So, and I see a lot of, the second largest demographic that watches my channel is Indian, are my Indian homies. And they're concerned about AI too, because it's taking their jobs also. So, sure, there are going to be some cases where stuff is outsourced, but Indians, just like Americans, are also concerned with how AI is taking over their work. Regardless, a tech company, corporation may be incentivized to blame AI for an Indian job. Why? Well, because it prevents any major backlash against H-1B visas, and it also prevents them from getting into a scuffle with the US government. I mean, if you're following politics even mildly closely, you understand that Trump is part of the Make America Great Again movement. And a big part of that is we want the jobs here in America. We want manufacturing here in America. We want domestic product here in America. We're putting tariffs on everyone else because we want to incentivize companies to invest in America. And I mean, you could say it's working, it's not working, it's complex. I'm not going to get into all my opinions there. However, the point remains that if you didn't want to get into a turf war with Trump over the way that you're hiring, you might say that you're using AI at a higher degree. I will say, just as a side note, that Trump has said that we will allow H-1B visas, but it requires a much higher investment. I think it's something like, you have to spend $500,000 to get your H-1B visa card per employee, which, you're not going to be H-1B visaing a customer service rep at a cost like that. You might hire some like really top tier AI engineering skill. That's not going to be just your average worker. So at any rate, you can see that there's a lot of trends, and it's a complicated issue, guys. But what you can see, and again, I was pretty shocked to see this, that when companies are saying that they're laying off people due to AI, and by the way, I'm sure there's a lot of other jobs that were fired and they're experimenting with AI. You say, hey, we're streamlined, we're efficient, and you're maybe not necessarily blaming it on AI, but AI is a portion of it. Again, it gets deep. Regardless, if companies are directly saying we are firing these people because we're using AI, if that's 20,000, but 10,000 of them happen in just the last 30 days, that is a concern to me. And there's a lot of fears around artificial intelligence and what it's going to do. My biggest fear is hundreds of millions of jobs become displaced. Men lose their purpose. They lose their relevancy. They lose the respect of their families and their communities and their wives and their self-respect. And that is terrible, terrible, terrible society, because we need men. We need men to step up and be responsible. And I think now, guys, my kind of summary here is that you absolutely have to adapt to what is happening. You have to be curious, you have to adapt. And I think there's a few interesting points here to kind of close this out. I was reading another article where the CEO of the large tech firm Ignite Tech, he did this 2 years ago. He laid off 80% of his workforce because they were resistant to AI adoption. And he said he would do it again. You cannot be resistant to what's happening. You know, you cannot be stubborn and dig your feet into the mud and say, I'm not going to adapt. This is the way I've always done it. That is an incredibly dangerous way to live. And this is kind of just a quick side story. One of my newsletter subscribers, AI Update, you can go to the aiupdate.ai to subscribe to my newsletter. One of my newsletter subscribers reached out to me over the weekend and said, hey, Mark, I just want to chat for a minute. And I said, I normally I have paid consulting offers, but I said, you know what, we've spoken for a while, we've spoken in the past, let's hop on a call. And he was moving to a new job and he just needed help kind of getting and prepared for that job. And so I gave him my feedback, what I'm seeing in the market. And one of the things I really pushed on him was, listen, before you go into that meeting, you should be using ChatGPT to learn more about the company, to learn more about your roles, and to generate questions that you should ask the employer. I just think that if I'm hiring someone, I want someone to be curious about whether I'm a good fit for them. Not necessarily hire me, but like, am I going to be a good fit culturally? Am I going to be a good fit as far as my goals and my term? Like, when you go in as an interviewee for a company, you don't want to seem desperate, and you want to interview them just as much as they're going to interview you. But I side note, he said, okay. And to his credit, he had never used ChatGPT before. He didn't even know how to spell it. Well, he downloaded it. He started using it. 10 minutes later, he was like, this is amazing. It's give me all these questions, give me all these things to think about. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is the type of person you want to hire. The type of person who's willing to adapt and learn for their good and for the good of the company. So in any event, don't be one of those guys that pushes this off. And this is another really interesting report that was reported in Writer. Get this stat. This stat is crazy. 1 in 3 workers say they have actively sabotaged AI rollouts within their organization. 1 in 3, and please believe it's a higher number than that. If only 1 in 3 people admit, yeah, I sabotaged the rollout, there's more than that, for sure. At any rate, 1 in 3 workers said their company has rolled out AI and they have sabotaged it. How do they do that? Well, they either refuse to use the tools, they've intentionally generated low quality inputs and outputs, which is crazy, and they've avoided training altogether. And these are the type of guys that are going to get laid off. If you're showing up to work just to do the work, if you're not showing up to work to try to get better and learn, you're cruising for bruising, my friend. Because, and this is the thing that I don't think people fully appreciate or understand, is that when things do happen, again, we've just talked about 20,000 layoffs, specifically due to AI this year. When things happen, they could happen very, very quickly. It could be one regulation away. It could be one lawsuit away. It could be one bill away. It could be one small step in a technology from an entire industry being displaced. And I've mentioned this before, Amazon now has almost nearly as many robots working in their warehouses as humans. They have now deployed, this stat is 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, so it could even be more. Amazon has now deployed over 1 million robots into their warehouses. It's nearly a 1-to-1 ratio, robot to human in their warehouses. That's crazy. If you think that is going to stop, you're bananas. And guess what? If Amazon proves that model, if they prove the industry, this is how it should be done, the other companies are going to do it too. Target, Walmart, all the other retailers, all the other warehouse management companies are all going to implement these same tools and softwares. Everything could change overnight. And if you are one of these guys who's resistant or faking outputs to intentionally get bad results, my friend, you will not be hireable. Do not act like that. And I know that if you're watching this, you wouldn't act like that. But that is a bad place to be. And just another quick story that I'd like to share. I was watching the movie Founder, which is about the founder of McDonald's the other day, which I thought was really fascinating. And at the time, if you wanted to order, there was no fast food restaurants. If you wanted to order food, you would pull up, there would be a girl in the roller skates that would roll up to you, take your order, go back, bring it back. It was broken, it was slow, there were lots of issues. I won't go into all the issues, but it was just not a great model. So, well, what happened? This guy, the founder, finds out about McDonald's, which at the time was not called, or it was called McDonald's, but what they had done is they invented essentially fast food. You pull up, you get out of your car, you say, I want hamburger, fries, milkshake, you get it 30 seconds later. It was fast. What do you have nowadays, guys? There are no skate up roller girls taking your order and going back. It doesn't happen. There's maybe like one niche restaurant, like Sonic might do this a little bit. Everything now is fast food. They broke the model. They found the thing that works. And that could happen in your industry. My prediction is it's going to happen. It is going to start happening in every industry. Vibe coding, salespeople, customer success, customer support. It could happen frankly, self-driving. There was a comment the other day that said self-driving can't happen because of liability. I'm like, okay, fair. So let's say they solve liability. Let's say it becomes less expensive. Then what? Overnight, boom. They've solved that one problem, everything changed. They've solved that one regulation, everything changes. It could happen overnight. So to kind of summarize this, it's not a good time to be comfortable. It's a good time to be curious and be adaptable. And my guess is if you're watching this channel, that's the type of person you are. And listen, I just really appreciate you watching the video today. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below to contribute to the conversation. I don't have all the answers, but collectively, as a community of men, we can put the answers together that are going to just solve massive, massive problems for the world. We're going to bring up a better generation. We're going to build relevancy, respect, and financial freedom. Okay? I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.